Now let's talk about the next step, writing DAX measures. Again, there are a couple of things we need to think about. When you start writing DAX, you should always plan your calculation in layers. At least, this is how I approach it. We'll build the three main categories of measures, monthly, quarterly, and yearly calculations. And before we get into these, we'll start with what I call the basic or foundational measures. Simple totals that other measures will reference later. Once you have these building blocks in place, you can add filters and time intelligence to make the model fully dynamic. So, first step, open Power Pivot, Measures, and New Measures. Welcome to the world of DAX. It's very similar in logic to Excel, but it runs inside the model. Let's create our first basic measure. This one will calculate the total trial balance, and we'll use it later inside all other measures. We can name it something like TOTALTB. In DAX, functions follow a syntax that feels familiar. Sum, bracket, and table name, and then you're going to put it the column name inside the square bracket. Just like Excel's sum function, but with the table and the column references. So we'll write TOTALTB equals, so that's the name of DAX. And you always start with the equal sign, and sum, that's a function, and then you're gonna open bracket, and then TB is the table name, and then amount is a column name. Always check the formula syntax. If there is no error, click OK. Now change the formatting, set it as a whole number, and then turn on the 1000 separator. We don't need decimals for this one. And there we go. We create our first measure. Now let's see what it does. Go back to Excel, insert pivot table. Because we already have a data model, we'll select from data model instead of external sources. Once the pivot table opens, notice that all the tables we added, trial balance, chart of account, and calendar, are now visible and connected. That's because we built the relationships earlier using primary and foreign keys. Let's test it by building a quick view of the financial statement. Drag the section field from the chart of account table into rows. You will immediately see the balance sheet and income statement sections appear in the pivot table. Now add a category to the rows as well. Within each section, you'll now see categories like assets, liabilities, and equity under the balance sheet, and the revenue and expenses under the income statement. Next, let's add the financial statement captions to the rows. This gives you the individual line items within each category. Then, from the calendar table, drag a month and date into the columns area. Finally, drag the only measure TOTALTB into the values area. You will see the numbers populate right away. Notice that the column totals show 0, which is exactly what we expect, because in a trial balance, total debit must equal total credit. That means our DAX measures is working perfectly. All right, let's make a month and date calendar named range using the data from the calendar table. First, we're going to create a new tab and call it input. This is where we'll bring in the calendar data from our data model. Now go to the insert tab on the ribbon, click pivot table, and choose from data model. I'm happy with the location that Excel suggests, so just click OK. Drag month and date down to the rows area. That's all we need here, just a clean list of all month and date. Next, right click anywhere inside the pivot table to open the menu and then select pivot table options. Under the totals and filters tab, uncheck show grand totals for rows and columns. Then go to layout and format and uncheck auto fit column width on update. Click OK. That's all we need for now. With our cursor still inside the pivot table, go to the design ribbon, then under pivot table style options, uncheck column headers to keep it clean. Now select the date range in the pivot table. go up to the name range at the top left, go to the name range box at the top left, right above column A, and the type calendar, then press enter. Perfect. If you click on the drop down arrow in the name box, you will see calendar listed. And when you select it, Excel highlights the full date range. That means your name range is set up correctly, and we are now ready to use it to create our dynamic date selector for the report. Now, let's create our MTD, QTD, and YTD measures and make them dynamic. First, we'll create a simple drop-down list with the three options, MTD, QTD, and YTD. We're using the total MTD, total QTD, and total YTD functions. These are some of the most commonly used time intelligence functions, and Microsoft made them as a shortcut. They are really just calculate functions. So if I have to add one more must-know function to your DAX toolkit, it will be the calculate function. The syntax is simple. The first argument is your expression. In our case, that's our basic measure, TOTALTB. The second argument is your date column. That's it. The syntax is the same for QTD and YTD as well. Once the measures are ready, we'll copy the formulas throughout the rest of the income statement. There's also one additional measure to calculate cumulative net income. This is important because current month net income doesn't roll up to retained earnings until the following month. That's how I've set it up here. But keep in mind, some companies don't roll up their net income to retained earnings until the year-end close is completed, so you may need to adjust the logic for your own setup. Now, let's create the MTD net income measure. The syntax uses calculate function. The first argument is our measure, MTD-TB, and the rest of the arguments are filters. In this case, we only need one filter where the financial statement section equals income statement. What this does is simple. The calculate function first filters the trial balance to include only the income statement items, and then it uses MTD-TB as the expression. So all income statement items for the month get added up correctly. Once the measure is created, go to the retained earnings line and then add a cube value function to bring in the MTD net income measure. You will notice right away the difference disappears to 0. That means everything ties out perfectly. Now let's check the difference. And as you can see, the difference is 0. Everything balances perfectly.